What's happening, guys? This is Logan Robinson from here, the Cannons here at One Buck, and we just got done with Zach Robinson's Buccaneers new offensive coordinator interview, introductory press conference. Also, we just had a standalone little side conversation with him for about 30 minutes, getting to know him a little bit more personally. Also, to his thoughts on Baker Mayfield, the potential of Mike Evans coming back for another season with the Bucs. Jalen McMillan, what he brings to the offense, even some Tez Johnson's talk, and also, too, a comparison between Bucky Irving and Bijan Robinson just a little bit ago. But with me is River Wells, our lead editor at BucsGameday. River.
I got taller.
Yeah, I was going to say, we need to go ahead and start off with saying, I promise you I'm not this short. This chair is way different of a level over here, but we had to do what we had to do because it's freezing outside. We're not used to this cold out here, and we weren't going to do it. We weren't going to do it outside today, but we got a spot here thanks to the Bucs PR team. But let's talk about Zach Robinson here for a little bit, Dan. He had a long interview there, about 30 minutes. I'm sure it's over there on the Bucs YouTube that you guys can go listen to. But we learned a lot. And I think for him having the familiarity, is that the way to say right there? Yeah, between the Bucs and the Falcons helps this process a little bit more. Also, too, just that relationship with Baker Mayfield, which we can probably start off with here.
Yeah, he was with Baker Mayfield in 2022. If you guys remember, Baker had that crazy 5-day stretch where he had to get ready to play the Raiders, and Zach Robinson was there as his quarterback's coach at that point, and they got along really well. He said, you could tell how prepared he was in meetings because he had to be for that game, right? Mm-hmm. He really had to be, and he was really impressed. Baker was actually there. He was kind of doing like a Marvel, he was hiding his identity sort of thing in the back.
Yeah, I spotted him. I was like, who is that with the hoodie on and wanting to get out of there very quickly? And I was like, that's good because I can see the flow coming out in the back.
Yeah, and it's kind of a different situation where you've got you had a rookie in Penix that he had last year, and then you had Kirk Cousins, who he also had last year for sure, veteran. Baker Mayfield leans more into that veteran sort of thing, and it's going to be interesting to see what he can do with him. He speaks very highly of him. He said you can tell just the way he works and the way he is as a person. He's excited to get to work with him, and as we know, they kind of vouched for Robinson to get this job.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a lot of mutual interest there, and I think it's going to be fun to see how they can work together. And maybe if he can recapture some of that old Baker magic that we had at the beginning of this year and then 2024.
And what was brought up quite a bit in the conversation, in the presser, but also, too, in the side conversation we all just had was the connection with Liam Cohen. So Liam Cohen and the Robinson family, they have a really close relationship. And there was a conversation before getting this job here in Tampa, hey, this is what you're going to, what the process is going to be like, coaching under Bowles. And for Bowles, whenever you're an offensive coordinator, you are practically the head coach of that offense. You kind of do what you need to do, and all of that stuff on your shoulders is on you. And that's, Liam Cohen was straight up with him, and he said that a lot of that conversation helped maybe make that process a little bit easier to understand of what his role would be looking like in Tampa. And with that, it attracts a lot of, offensive coordinators because they like to have all of that leverage, more leverage for them. They feel like they have more opportunities to do things that they want to do offensively. And I think that's what helped him, with Liam Cohen and having that relationship there certainly, made an impact a little bit.
Yeah, Liam said, or Zach said that Liam told him, he thought highly of Todd Bowles as a mentor, and here in Tampa Bay. And definitely gave him the green light, to go ahead and get this one. But he mentioned as well, I didn't need any convincing to take this Tampa Bay job, right? Yeah. He said Liam didn't pitch me on anything. He didn't say, you got to do this, right? He said, I wanted this job, and I hope that end up here, and now he's here. So he's excited. The Bucs are excited. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah. So, going a little bit further here, he talked about the offense, and this is like your wheelhouse. You've always loved, going in because I came into One Buck today and I was like, here we are again. We're here again of introducing and get to know a new offensive coordinator, but you like asking all the questions about what the offense is going to look like. What's the motion looking like? Are you going to be running more pistol like you like to do with Penix whenever he was in Atlanta? What were your biggest takeaways of how this offense is going to look, and if there's going to be any kind of changes going into 2026 with different type of personnel, and certainly still a heavy amount of talent that this Buccaneers offense will have going into next season?
Well, he didn't bite on the pistol question, unfortunately. So take that as you will, Bucs fans. He's at near the league high rate in the last 2 years. Yeah. It's been a point of contention with his offense, but he didn't say either way whether he would stop doing that. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah, I thought it was interesting. He's got a lot of interesting philosophies on usage of personnel. He was an 11 personnel guy in Atlanta, and then he ran a lot more 12 in 2024 or 2025, sorry. And because of that, we kind of saw Sean McVay do that as well with 13 personnel, 12 personnel, more tight ends, heavier sets to kind of dictate where the defense goes. And he said, yeah, we're definitely going to do that here, depending on what looks we want to get, whether we want them in the nickel, we want them in the base. And he said, you recalled last time they played the Saints last year, and we lived in 13. So he's like, he's able to do a lot of different mix-ups in that personnel grouping. And I think that's an encouraging sign for a new offensive coordinator because it shows that he's willing to take a lot of risks and he's willing to change up his scheme based on what he sees from the defense during tape and during the week's preparation. So that's a pretty good thing for sure. Finally, motion. Really big motion guy he was. He ran it almost 20% more than the league average last year. And he says, it's a big part of the NFL game. It's trying to get your guys in position. It's trying to dictate coverages, and it's going to be a big part of what he does in Tampa Bay. So I would expect that motion and the type of motion probably to increase from last year under Josh Grizzard. Grizzard ran a lot of what's called return motion. So his guys would move and then come right back as kind of a man zone indicator. But you might get some more looks here with motion, with running backs, with wide receivers. He used it on wide receivers most of the time. So could be a lot of fun. Definitely runs a very Sean McVay Rams style offense. I think that's what this team wants.
And we're talking about some personnel that he'll be able to use. It was brought up pretty early on because his son was there at the presser, and little guy, but he was wearing a creamsicle Mike Evans jersey, and it was brought up immediately. How would you be excited? Of course, I mean anybody would be excited to have Mike Evans play in your offense, but he's eager, hopefully to be able to work with Mike Evans, but there's some things that of course Mike Evans personally has to figure out on his own if he wants to continue playing football. Does it maybe somewhere else? That's a discussion that we're going to continue to have this entire offseason. But he did bring up Emeka Egbuka. I had asked him, what is it going to look like for him going into a sophomore year where you saw in his rookie year, man, he had to step up big time. He had Mike Evans injured. Chris Godwin couldn't start off the season as well. He had to step up to the plate and also be wide receiver one, which is not easy for anybody to do. Certainly a rookie to do that and come in. And he has a lot of he said I had a lot of high remarks about what Egbuka can look like in this offense as a threat and the passing game, even in the backfield, some sweeps like that. That's something that he was able to do at Ohio State. We also saw that a ton in the training camp this last year. And you're like, wow, Emeka Egbuka is going to be utilized all across the board. And that just seemed to kind of fall off under Grizz as we went into the middle part of the season at the bye week and just couldn't kind of figure out how to put all those pieces together. Do you think, with an experienced offensive coordinator like Zach, that should be able to hopefully help the play of a guy like Emeka Egbuka, who was your first round pick last year?
Yeah, it's knowing what he's really good at. And we talked about yards after catch and generating yak yards. And Liam Cohen was so good at that in 2024. Grizzard couldn't quite do that in 2025. But I think that's where Emeka Egbuka really shines, right? And he struggled against man coverage a little bit last year. But his ability to feel the gaps in zone and kind of get in between the defense, I thought was really, really good, and he was really talented at doing that.
Now Puka Nacua is a different animal, different wide receiver. He can do a lot of different things, more of a deep threat as well. Yeah. But that's something though that Nacua did a really good job with Stafford and is finding those middle zone
and Godwin's really good at that sort of thing too, right? So I think getting the right matchups and choosing the personnel that will allow Emeka Egbuka to find those holes easier. Yeah. I think that's where Zach Robinson could really do a lot of work for this Tampa Bay offense, and we're in a more experienced coordinator as opposed to Josh Grizzard can maybe be used to those matchups. And the key is to get Egbuka in a position to do what he does best, which is to kind of find the gaps in zone and get yards after catch and run his routes. And I think that's what Zach might be really good at doing.
Now, when I was speaking earlier in the intro to this podcast, was his thoughts on Bucky Irving and Bijan Robinson is, like we were saying, Puka Nacua, Bijan Robinson, those are different animals, different type of beasts, but he does feel a lot of confidence in what Bucky Irving can bring to this offense, specifically in the receiving game. What was some of your biggest takeaways from that? Because you could tell he's got a lot of respect for Bucky. He's had a lot of tape on Bucky, of course, being in that same division. He understands that even though he's not specifically facing him 2 times a year as being the offensive coordinator for the Falcons, but he still knows very well about Bucky and what he can bring, because there's a lot of versatility. I mean, you saw in the rookie season, he dealt with that injury all in 2025, multiple injuries, I must say, and not even just injuries, 2 mental things that he was going through as well, being the first time injured in his football career. But you can tell, there's a lot of smiles whenever Zach Robinson is talking about what he can do potentially with this offense with Bucky Irving.
Absolutely. Bucky Irving's definitely got a lot of talent as a receiving back.
Yeah.
And he's got a lot of variability in the way that he can run the ball, make the first guy miss. He can do a lot of different things. And we saw how Zach Robinson utilized Bijan Robinson in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Obviously, just like the Puka Nacua thing we made, Bijan's a whole different animal. And probably more able to be a bell cow, whereas Bucky, I think, might not flourish quite in that role. But there's a lot that you can do with Bucky Irving, and I think with how well the rushing game was in Atlanta, with guys like Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson, both great players, and the Bucs really could use like a second back kind of like Tyler Algier, right?
That's going to be a big thing this offseason.
It will be, but I think Zach Robinson would really know how to utilize those type of players, and if he can get that success in Tampa Bay, maybe with a running back by committee, I think he can do great things with Bucky Irving, because utilizing what Bucky knows how to do best. And again, guys, he's friends with Liam Cohen, right? So Liam Cohen knows a lot of how to make these guys sick. So we'll see what the sort of back and forth there was. I don't know how much scheme or players they talked, but definitely Liam was a guy that was able to do those things. And if Zach can tap into that sort of philosophy and that sort of Los Angeles Rams style yards at their catch, short game, sort of run game. They run a lot of zone running in Los Angeles, and we've seen a lot of success in the gap here in Tampa Bay. But figuring out what Zach wants to do and how he can evolve, and I think he'll do a lot of good things about here.
I think just a guy that's experienced, who's a play caller, who has done this, is you're going to see some upside.
And Robinson
right off the bat.
Robinson is that.
Right off the bat with Josh Guzard, that was his first time doing so. And you can understand the Bucs' moves for doing that. They wanted to keep that same ties with Baker Mayfield. They didn't want to change up the philosophy of the offense as much. And that you shouldn't see much of a change there. Now, Zach's going to have his own kind of way of doing things, absolutely, but just understanding where your personnel fits best for play to play to play. That was something that stood out to me, that he was very strict on saying, there's 60 to 65 plays, maybe 70 max, that I'll get a game. All those plays have to be something that fit my player personnel.
Right.
And that is something that I think fell off last year, and I just don't think that Guzard was able to really, once he got all the troops back together, just couldn't really get those things clean. I mean, it's funny, because I was thinking about it this entire offseason so far. I was like, man, it is obviously a positive to have all that talent back at once. That's huge to have an offense, but I think it's even harder though to try to figure out how can you utilize them on a play-to-play basis and also find good production out of that. Like, Zach is going to have the experience, and he'll understand how to do that. That's what you're hoping for here.
Absolutely, and he's learned from a lot of really good play callers, Sean McVay being primarily the big one. And, of course, Liam Cohen was the offensive coordinator in Los Angeles. Didn't call plays, but was under Sean McVay, so he learned from him too.
Yeah.
Obviously, Josh Guzard did, so it's not exactly a 100%, success rate. But I think there's a lot that he couldn't do in Atlanta that he might be able to do in Tampa Bay. And I think the things that he did do in Atlanta might lend themselves particularly well to what happens in Tampa Bay. So, I think he's got a really good grasp on where the NFL is headed, the modern NFL game, how it evolves, how the personnel usage evolves, how motion evolves. And the big thing, which I thought Liam Cohen did a great job at in Tampa Bay and what he's doing great in Jacksonville, is being able to change your scheme, being able to change things towards your personnel, like you said. And I think perhaps Josh Guzard had some trouble with that, and I think now Zach Robinson has the opportunity to do a lot of good things with this skill position group.
So here's a comment here on Facebook saying, I love the fact that he wants to be here, said he didn't want to be sold.
Absolutely.
He didn't need to be sold on the job. And so he took us through the story and the timeline of him coming here, interviewing at One Buck, where we're at right now, and then headed to the airport after the interview and then getting a call from Todd Bowles.
Todd's like, hey, it's time, man. It's time.
Turn around, bud. Get out of TSA. You're coming right back. He was at the gate, I guess, about to get on the plane and said, you're not leaving today. And came back, signed, got the deal done. And here he is. And yes, you can tell there's a lot of excitement here. And there should be a lot of excitement because you've got a quarterback here that this franchise feels very strongly in moving forward. Yes, the last season wasn't what Baker wanted whatsoever, but you saw the growth from him in 2024, and that still feels like that can be closely predicated with a guy with Zach Robinson because of the ties that he's had previously, just like how Liam Cohen had with Baker. You're hoping that's going to be the same case, and I know a lot of people are looking for Mike McDaniel. That's going to be the hottest name. That is the top prom pick right there. You want to get that one. You want to get that. There was an opportunity, and I think the Bucs were very close in doing so for Mike McDaniel, but that just did not work out.
Right.
I think more the ties for McDaniel and his family being in California probably leaned a little bit better in that favor for him. And of course, you have Herbert, who's a younger quarterback as well, that they feel strongly on, and Harbaugh maybe a safer option there for head coach moving forward. But you can tell, though, there's a lot of excitement about being down here, and it's going to be very interesting to see what kind of moves they do this offseason because, yes, there is a lot that the defense needs, absolutely.
Yes.
But when we talk about tight end, there's a conversation about Cade Otton,
free agent,
and what works and what's moving forward there, and you got to figure out too what Mike Evans, what that situation is going to look like if Mike Evans isn't here and decides not to play in 2026.
Yeah, a lot of decisions to make, a lot of free agents to try and wrangle in.
Running back, like we mentioned earlier.
If they don't re-sign a lot of these guys, we know Jason Light loves to re-sign a lot of his guys. You're going to have to be active in the market, and we'll see if Jason Light's willing to do that. But if you got a guy like Zach Robinson who wants to use these tools, you got to get him some tools. And obviously, defense is going to be the biggest thing in the offseason, getting defensive depth, building the defense. But there's some guys in the offense you're going to have to retain too. Some guys like Rashad White that are going to leave. And we'll see what the Bucs will do to try and get Robinson some more weapons on the offense to build his offense around. And it'll be an interesting offseason for Jason Light. We'll see if he breaks his tendency in that sort of regard. Yeah,
we'll see. So, a couple quick hitters here. He called Tristan Wirfs the best tackle in the NFL. He feels like this is going to make things a lot easier offensively.
He knows all the right things to say for his second day on the job.
He did know that. He also brought up Tez Johnson as well, being extremely speedy. He feels like that can add some explosiveness to the offense overall. It feels like that whole entire he was really kind of almost salivating at the offensive line.
Right.
And as Carberry, their coach for the offensive line.
Love Carbs. Carbs.
Coach Carbs, which he, expected to stay and be your 2026 offensive line coach, which is really good news for the Buccaneers. But yeah, I think it was a pretty good interview and introductory press conference. A lot of media here as well to cover, and his whole family was here, which was great. But he's got a busy process moving forward, as he was just telling us, of now figuring out his coaching personnel and who he's going to be bringing in, and he's got to work with Todd Bowles on that. And actually, Todd was going to be at the press conference, but he's currently doing interviews right now, putting some pieces together there too. So we're going to keep a close on it. It could be close. Maybe by the end of the week we'll get some more assistance coming in on the offensive side of the ball as he continues to put his staff together that he wants. But there are already some pieces here that the Bucs, I think are going to be that he'll be able to work with going into next year. Any last thoughts on Zach's opening presser here for the Bucs?
I think the Bucs wanted Zach Robinson because of that familiar offense, and I think the philosophy that he kind of coaches with. I think Baker Mayfield's going to want that same thing. A lot of fans aren't happy about it, obviously, because of what happened in Atlanta and then missing out on Mike McDaniel and, we could have done better. I think he'll do a fine job. I think he'll have a lot to work with. I think he'll be able to do things in Atlanta do things here that he wasn't able to do in Atlanta. I think he's got a really modern look on what makes an NFL offense, how it can evolve, said all the right things today. So we can only see kind of how training camp goes and how all that goes and see if he'll do a good job in 2026.
Absolutely. So that's going to do it for us for our instant reaction to Zach Robinson's press conference here. We'll be live maybe later on in the week. If we do, make sure you guys go over and hit that subscribe button down below. Hit the bell next to it as well, because we don't know when we'll be going live, but if there's any kind of
like button.
Yes, smack the like button. We're trying to get to 25 likes. If we get to 50, then Rivers shaving his head. I don't know. I can't
No,
say that now.
no,
That's
I'm
not
not doing
happening.
that.
That can't happen. It's trimmed up right now. It's trimmed up.
Yeah, it's trimmed up.
When is it coming back long?
Whenever it comes back long.
I don't know. You're staying away from it.
You know, I had it. And now it's a little short.
Yeah, it's getting trimmed up. Now I'm getting a little bit of the longer hair, but do hit that subscribe button, hit the bell next to it, just in case we do go live for any kind of breaking news, or if we do have a show that we feel like we need to cover a few things. Absolutely. But we appreciate y'all hanging out with us, and we'll talk to you guys next time on Here the Cannons. We're out of here.